I nearly spat out my coffee when I heard this. Charles Hoskinson claims that my favorite crypto could explode 1000x. That's 1,000 times your money. It sounds like every investor's wildest dream, right? But hold on. My skeptic alarm went off even as my heart started racing. Is this for real, or is Charles just spinning fairy tales? Now I had to find out, and let me tell you, that rabbit hole got wild. Now, I'm a long-time ADA holder, and when the founder of Cardano says something that bold, you bet that I perk up. Now, I've ridden the ups and the downs with ADA for years, but 1000x gain isn't something that you hear every day. It's the kind of statement that makes you simultaneously daydream about yachts and double check to see if you even heard it right. So I'm going to embark on a little adventure to investigate what's behind this 1000x claim. Is there substance here, or are we just chasing fantasies? Now, along the way, I'm going to bump into some pretty big revelations about Cardano, about Bitcoin, and about how easily we can get caught up in all the crypto hype. By the end of this story, you're going to, well, I promise you one thing, you're going to see this claim in a totally new light. And hey, if you've ever felt torn between crypto FOMO and logic, this one's especially for you. And oh, here's a quick shout out as well. We've got a free educational Discord server. The link is in the description. This is where we kind of talk about this stuff all the time, so you can come and join the convo. Okay, so picture this, right? I'm scrolling through crypto news, probably procrastinating about something important, and I see the headline. Charles Hoskinson claims ADA could 1000x, while Bitcoin could 10x. Now, my first reaction is, wait, did he actually put a number on it? Charles usually speaks in technical riddles or big picture kind of philosophy, not straight up price multipliers. Curiosity officially kind of peaked, so I dug into the interview details. Now, apparently, in this recent interview, Charles was comparing Cardano to Bitcoin in terms of potential growth. Now, he basically said, yeah, Bitcoin, it might do a nice 10x if things go great, but ADA could deliver returns of 100x to 1000x. Then, with a bit of sarcasm, he joked, oh, sure, let's sell ADA for Bitcoin, so we can make less money. Now, I could almost see, the kind of smirk on his face here. As an ADA holder, that kind of gave me a little bit of a thrill, right? Our captain is confident, right? But at the same time, my common sense was whispering, did he really just throw out 1000x like it's no big deal? Now, I love Cardano, but I'm not delusional, right? A 1000x increase is astronomical. Like, let's do some quick math here, messy math, of course. Let's say ADA is around 77 cents at the point of recording, right? Multiply that by 1000 and you'll get $770 per ADA. And the market cap would balloon to tens of trillions of dollars. Now, we're talking roughly a $28 trillion market cap, give or take a few trillion dollars. I mean, what's a trillion between friends, right? Put that, at least to put that into a $28 trillion into perspective, that's about the size of the entire US economy yearly output. That's nearly 10 times the value of all cryptocurrencies combined at the last market peak. So in other words, Charles is essentially hinting that Cardano could become one of the most valuable things on the planet, period. It's bold, doesn't even begin to describe it. Now, at this point, I'm equal parts amped and skeptical, right? The dreamer in me is picturing my modest ADA bag turning into an absolute mansion, a Lambo and private island for good measure. But I'm the realist, at least the realist inside me. He says, come on, this sounds too good to be true. So I needed to sanity check this. And you know what I did? I hopped into our Discord and onto Twitter, or X as it's now called, old habits die hard and all that, to kind of gauge the community's reaction. And to see if I'm freaking out or surely others are too, right? And oh boy, the internet did not disappoint, right? The Cardano community was buzzing, all right? Some people were practically typing in all caps how this is the validation that they needed, and others were kind of face palming so hard that you could almost hear it across the interwebs. Now, one user on X went viral with a post basically saying ADA to 1000X. That means around an $800 ADA and a $28.3 trillion market cap. Let's be real, that's never gonna happen. It's ridiculous to even say it, and new folks, might actually believe this fantasy. How about focusing on real utility and adoption instead? Ouch, right? Now, that tells us, how you really feel, or at least tell us how you really feel, random X user. But I'm going to be honest, reading that was a little bit of a cold shower, because he's right about the math to a degree. Those numbers are insane. And the last thing that I want to see is a fellow ADA investor, especially newbies, get misled and think that they're all going to retire next year on a 1000x moonshot. Well, that's how bad decisions get made. Crypto's already risky without unrealistic expectations. But here is the thing, and I can't just dismiss Charles Hoskinson outright. The guy is brilliant, whether you love him or hate him, and he's been in the crypto trenches a very long time. Heck, he co-founded Ethereum before Cardano, so maybe he has some rationale. Let's consider his perspective for just a minute. Now, Charles' argument hinges on market cap and growth runway. Now, Bitcoin is the big daddy of crypto. It's already huge. So doubling or even 10xing Bitcoin takes a whole ton of new money. It's kind of like trying to turn a mountain into a volcano. It's possible, sure, but it requires massive forces. ADA, on the other hand, is much smaller. Its market cap is what? Tens or maybe tens of billions rather than, hundreds of billions. So Charles is saying, comparatively, Cardano has more room to grow because it's starting from a smaller base. It's the difference between trying to pump up a balloon versus a Zeppelin, right? Now, the balloon, ADA, can blow up 1000x its size, hopefully without popping, right? Easier than you can actually blow up a giant Zeppelin up to 1000x. That's Bitcoin is already a giant Zeppelin in this analogy, if you hadn't gathered. So does that logic even hold? Well, in a simplistic way, yes, a smaller market cap coin can indeed multiply much faster if it gains traction. We've seen tiny altcoins go 100x or more in crazy bull runs. But here is the nuance of it. Cardano is not a tiny, unknown project. It's a top 10 cryptocurrency. Now, the larger a project gets, the harder it is to maintain those kind of ridiculous growth multiples. Now, the law of big numbers starts kicking in. Going from 1 penny to $10 is one thing. That's 1000x, by the way. But going from 77 cents to $770 is a whole different ballgame with a lot more zeros involved. But it's at this point I should probably just kind of pause for a moment to let everyone understand the market cap math, because market cap in itself can be rather misleading. For example, a lot of people come into this space, they take a look at the market cap, and they think that that amount of money is already here. But here's the kind of kicker. It isn't, right? Market cap is actually only a representation of the price, right? So in crypto, you take the circulating supply and you multiply it by the existing price. Now, that does not mean that you can instantly liquidate an entire supply of cryptocurrency for that price. Okay, money in does not equal market cap. And this is why price dictates the market cap. It's supply and the demand mechanics. Now, one of the most kind of nuances to this is when a lot of people think about, let's say $100,000 or $1 billion of inflows, let's say, right, comes into ADA, they think you just add $1 billion to the market cap, but that's not true. Instead, because we live in a sum-zero game, by the way, that no money here is actually ever made or created, it's only ever transferred from player A to player B, right? You don't just make money, you're just taking it from someone else, right? You're buying low to sell high, as in you're selling your coins to someone who believes the price is going higher, right? You're not making money magically. It's not magical internet money, right? So money coming in doesn't equal market cap. What money in does is it boosts the volume. And if there's an imbalance between the supply and the demand, you get price action. Now, that price action can go up or down depending on the imbalance between the supply and the demand. So if there is a really thin order book, as in not many people are selling, right, and a buy order comes in, well, price has to go and find the buyers. So price goes up to find people willing to sell at a higher price. So when we start thinking about that, let's say $1,000 buy could potentially take the price from, let's say, a penny up to, let's say, 10 cents, and you have a 10x gain, but it only came from $1,000. Now, if your supply is quite massive, well, you could see astronomical gains on the market cap. Your market cap might go up to, let's say, an extra 100,000, 200,000 just from a single $1,000 buy. These are extremes, of course, but hopefully it conveys my point that market cap is insanely misleading. And actually what you need to focus on is the supply and the demand. That imbalance determines where the price is going. Now, I should also mention Charles's comment. It wasn't made in a vacuum of, you know, 𝗕𝗫𝗀𝗀𝗃 kind of Cardano maximalism, right? Instead, and interestingly, he's not actually all about kind of a Bitcoin hater or anything like that. In fact, earlier this month, he was actually hyping some US regulatory, clarity efforts, something called the Genius and Clarity Acts, by the way. Congress loves their acronyms, that he actually believes could trigger a multi-trillion-dollar wave of capital into Bitcoin and crypto at large. So he's not gone on the record saying that he expects Bitcoin could rally up to $250,000 at some time. Or, I should say he has gone on the record saying that he expects Bitcoin to rally up at some point to 250K. So the man is bullish on crypto across the board, right? So when he says Bitcoin could 10x, he's actually talking about something like going from roughly 30K to 300K per Bitcoin, which actually would make a lot of early Bitcoin holders very, very happy. Now, that's nothing to sneeze at all, right? But in Charles's eyes, Bitcoin only got a 10x in it, whereas ADA, the younger and smaller, could actually have 100x or 1000x potential. And again, it depends on where you start your growth from. Are you starting at sub 1 penny or upwards, or are you starting from today's price? So it's kind of like he's saying Bitcoin is the established player and Cardano is the upstart that could outrun if it gains traction. Now, as a storyteller, I'm just trying to be fair here. Part of me sees where Charles is coming from because I understand the market cap problem within crypto. And I understand where he's coming from with his comparison. And hey, I wouldn't mind if ADA even hits 1% or if he's even 1% right? 1000x is pretty absurd, but what if ADA could do a 10x or a 20x from here? I would be over the moon, right? However, I also remember that Charles is, well, the founder of ADA. So he's talking his own book then, right? Of course, he's going to be a lot more bullish on Cardano than he is on maybe Bitcoin. And if he wasn't, well, that would be a red flag in itself. So we should probably take his prediction with a healthy dose of skepticism. Like picture a shaker, the size of a salt truck. Anyway, back to our journey. After soaking in the initial shock and community chatter, I needed a bit of a regroup, at least to regroup myself in some facts, right? The current state of Cardano versus Bitcoin, what's actually happening on the ground. So let's start things off with Bitcoin Real Talk, right? Bitcoin is the poster child of crypto, and it's kind of been having a moment with institutions lately. Now, there's all this talk about Bitcoin ETFs, big Wall Street firms like BlackRock wanting in, and even traditional finance finding ways to lend against Bitcoin or even earn yield with it. Now, Bitcoin is kind of like the gateway for big money to enter crypto. So it's already kind of got the wind in its sails. A 10x from here for Bitcoin would, imply a market cap north of $6 or $7 trillion. Since Bitcoin's around, it's actually quite a bit. Let me think. It's going to be closer to like 10 to $11 trillion. That's, gargantuan, right? It could basically cement Bitcoin as a globally significant asset on par with gold's market cap, right? Could that happen in a kind of long-term, super kind of bullish scenario? Sure, especially if those trillions from institutional investors do flow in. But of course, like I've said before, it doesn't take trillions of dollars of inflow to actually move the market cap. Now, Cardano, by contrast, is still building out its identity in the crypto world. It doesn't have the same level of institutional adoption. Not yet, anyway, and no one's actually proposing a Cardano ETF. Well, there are Cardano ETFs on the cards, I should say, but they aren't around the corner, or they are just around the corner, but they're not here right now. So Cardano, I guess, is actually often called the third generation blockchain that's trying to improve on what Bitcoin and Ethereum have done so far. But it's had its share of criticism for being slow and academic in its approach. Full disclosure though, I kind of like that about Cardano. It takes its time, peer review stuff. But on the flip side, it is, the market sometimes gets a little bit impatient with that. But I don't actually mind. This year, though, ADA's price showed that it can still surprise. So in July, amid a pretty hot crypto market, ADA actually ran from 54 cents to 93 cents at one point. Now, I remember watching that pump. My portfolio was very happy for it for a few weeks there. Now, the run was fueled by speculation, some rumor mills like linking Cardano to ETF news, or maybe even some altcoins rallying in general, and by some kind of real growth in Cardano's DeFi ecosystem, i.e. total value locked in Cardano, DeFi was rising, meaning that more people were using Cardano for things like lending, swapping, etc. Sentiment was just way up, and it felt like ADA was finally waking up from a long slumber. But of course, as any crypto OG knows, when things go straight up too fast, a pullback is around the corner waiting to yell surprise. And sure enough, ADA hit overbought signals on the charts, and some smart traders started taking profits. Now, over the last week or so, it corrected around 12%, sliding back to the mid-70s. And when I kind of checked this morning, it was around 77 cents. I'm not going to lie, seeing it fall back was a little bit of a bummer, but I wasn't shocked by it. After all, nothing goes up in a straight line forever. In fact, a little cooling off might actually be a healthy dose before another push to the upside. I'm still optimistic that ADA might actually cross that magical $1 mark in this bull run and potentially push much higher. I have my target set in the Discord after all. Now, a lot of this analysis and pretty much, every Cardano fan, they are eyeing the $1 as a big goal. It's a nice round number, psychological resistance, but could indicate much further growth. All right, so at this stage in my journey, I've got Charles's crazy 1000x claim on one hand, and on the other hand, I have the reality of Cardano's current status. Promising, improving, but nowhere near challenging Bitcoin's dominance just yet. I also have the kind of naysayers' voices in my head. Never gonna happen, focus on utility. So it's gonna probably a good time for me to mention a crucial point. And this one might just shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile, and you could lose all of the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. After all, your investments are entirely your responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses, and this video today is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Phew, well, I'm glad that I got that out of the way. I had to put on my kind of responsible adult hat just for a second there, because even talking about 1000x gains can make people do some pretty crazy things. Seriously, do not mortgage your house on any cryptocurrency, no matter who promises you what. Now, let's get back to the main story. And let me share a little personal anecdote, right? The night that I read about this 1000x prediction, I had a buddy that's who knows that I'm deep into ADA text me out of the blue. He's like, bro, did you see Hoskinson's interview? If ADA 1000x's, you're gonna be stupid rich. Drinks are on you next time. With, like a million rocket emojis after it. I laughed, of course, but it also made me a little uncomfortable. I don't want my friends thinking I'm secretly about to be a billionaire and I just haven't told them. I replied something like, haha, I saw that. I wouldn't go buying a Lambo just yet, man. 1000x is a long shot. And we kind of joked about it for a bit, but that moment stuck with me. It showed how easily a headline can get people carried away. I even kind of felt it in myself, right? A little voice in my head whispered, "What if?" And that "what if" is the most intoxicating part of investing in crypto, right? What if this really is the ticket to financial freedom? It's that same voice that I had, at least that had folks, I guess, buying lottery tickets when the jackpot hits $500 million. It's that rational, at least it's not rational, I should say, but it is very human. So to keep myself grounded, I decided to actually poke around and see what's being done to make ADA more valuable, because price predictions aside, the real way that ADA's price will climb and sustain it is if the project itself succeeds and gets widespread use. So let's talk utility for a moment, because Mr. Critical Twitter guy actually had a point. Focus on utility and adoption. Now, the Cardano ecosystem, while slower moving, has been steadily growing. Case in point, just a few days ago, the Cardano Foundation launched something pretty cool called 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗧𝗏. And if you're not a developer, you might not have actually have heard of it. But essentially, it's a new resource to help devs build on Cardano more easily. So think of it like a smart guide or a wizard that points developers to the right tools and resources for whatever they want to create on Cardano. Now, the goal is to cut down development time and avoid mistakes by giving devs a clear roadmap. And you might be thinking, why does this matter? Well, if building on Cardano becomes easier and faster, more projects and dApps can pop up on Cardano. More projects means more users, more demand for ADA, and a strong ecosystem overall. Now, that's the kind of thing that could actually drive value up in a tangible way. Maybe not 1000x, but hey, growth is growth. And I get it, right? 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗧𝗏 isn't as sexy as a headline as 1000x incoming. It's a bit nerdy, very inside baseball, but as an ADA holder who's in it for the tech, at least partly, the news actually made me quite happy, right? It's concrete progress. It's something that can foster adoption and utility. Exactly what, that Twitter critic and many of us actually want to see. Now, I'd rather Charles talk more about stuff like this sometimes, but I guess that doesn't generate as much buzz as a flashy prediction. Now, the more that I weighed all of these pieces, the hype, the backlash, the fundamentals, the more that I arrived at a balanced outlook. And here is where I land personally. I do believe that Cardano has a lot of upside. Maybe not 1000x, but that might be just a once-in-a-lifetime outlier scenario. But could it grow 5x, 10x, 20x over several years if the crypto really does take off and Cardano becomes a leading platform? Yes, I do. And I could see that in a strong bull case. I wouldn't complain about those returns one bit. But I'm also prepared for the possibility that it takes a very long time or never even reaches those heights. ADA, or at least investing in ADA for me, isn't about a quick flip or a wild gamble. It's about being a part of what I consider a meaningful project in the crypto space. I've been holding ADA for quite a while, and I plan to hold longer, but with eyes wide open. No Lambo dreams unless we actually start seeing some world-changing utility coming out of Cardano. Now, did Charles do something wrong by tossing out that 1000x figure? Not necessarily, right? He was speaking off the cuff, and maybe he truly believes in the potential if Cardano becomes as integral to the world as, say, the internet or something like that. Now, it could also have been a bit of tongue-in-cheek bravado to rally the troops. Now, Charles has a flair for the dramatic at times. Remember, this is the same guy who once trolled that he'd bought an authentic, 𝗕𝗪𝗀𝗀𝗧𝗏 yacht, to live in. A very long story, but people hang on every single word. So I think he and other crypto leaders should probably be mindful. There's a fine line between inspiring confidence and deluding people. But for me, hearing 1000x was a great reminder to stick to fundamentals. Right? It spurred me to double check why I invested in ADA, and the result, I'm still confident in Cardano's vision. Heck, things like the adoption stories, the academic approach, the community governance, and all kind of excite me. And that's why I bought ADA in the first place. And if those things do pan out, ADA's price will likely reflect that success over time. And oh, here's a quick aside note. During all of this excitement, I did log into my Kraken Pro account to eyeball the ADA chart. And yes, it's a shameless plug. I use Kraken Pro and I have an affiliate link that's in the description. Now, using that link, it supports the channel here. So thank you if you do sign up to Kraken Pro. Now, I was this close, right, to making an impulsive trade. Some part of me thought, should I grab a little bit more ADA before it moons? Or should I just take a little profit in case all of this hype, all hype, right? And in the end, I just kind of sat on my hands and did nothing. Sometimes the best move is no move, you know? So especially, you know, when you're kind of feeling emotional about things. Plus, I'm a long-term guy, right? Trading on headlines is usually a recipe for a facepalm later. So, what's the final verdict on this whole ADA 1000x saga? Well, it's complicated, like everything in crypto. If you twist my arm, I'll say, no, I don't think ADA is literally going to go to 1000x, and certainly not anytime soon. Now, that would put it at a kind of price and market cap that, with today's understanding of global finance, sounds almost comically high. Not impossible, as I explained earlier, because capital inflows can, of course, create these dreamy scenarios, but it would take a lot. Right? We would likely need a decade or two for, you know, that kind of insane innovation and adoption to kind of have that on the table. And even by then, who knows what else could happen. However, I do think ADA can grow significantly if Cardano achieves its goals, right? I wouldn't still be invested if I didn't think otherwise, right? Cardano's comment, you know, if nothing, reminds me, you know, or at least us, of difference between Bitcoin and everything else. Bitcoin might be the steady kind of giant, whereas altcoins like ADA are the agile upstarts with higher risk and higher reward potential. Just remember, higher reward comes with higher risk tattooed on its forehead. As for my personal plan, well, I'm going to keep holding my ADA and maybe even add to my position on sensible pullbacks. But I won't base my strategy on a sound bite. I'll base it on progress that I can observe. Upgrades like Hydra, you know, that's Cardano's scaling tech, real adoption in places like identity management or supply chain. Cardano has projects all over the world and, you know, I think they're pretty super cool. And of course, we've got to keep an eye on the developer activity, the people who are actually building on this thing. Those are all of the indicators for whether ADA can justify a much higher valuation in the future. In the end, this whole episode was kind of fun. It was a bit of a roller coaster of emotions in a short span of time, the excitement, the skepticism, the greed, the fear of missing out, and then back to reason and patience. Pretty much the full crypto investor experience distilled into one news cycle. And I realize that's exactly why I love being in this space. It's crazy, it's unpredictable, but it's also incredibly engaging. It forces us to learn, adapt, and sometimes confront our own unrealistic fantasies. So here's my takeaway for you guys. It's perfectly fine to hope that your favorite coin does a 1000x. Just don't expect it, and certainly don't bank your future on it. Use these big claims as motivations to dig deeper. Learn why someone believes that what they do. And if you find solid reasons, great. If you find holes in the logic, also great, because you're a smarter investor for it. Now discuss it with others. Seriously, join the Discord. It's full of people who will happily debate this stuff with you without all the toxic Twitter vibes. So stay informed, stay rational, and that's kind of the real edge in crypto that most people ignore while they're chasing the moonshots. Now, I'm really glad that I took the time to explore this instead of just brushing it off or conversely kind of drinking the Kool-Aid. It kind of reminded me why I'm in the Cardano community in the first place. It's not for promises of Lambos, although again, I wouldn't mind or wouldn't complain about it either. But it's for the shared vision of a better crypto ecosystem that Cardano is trying to build. And hey, if Charles somehow turns out to be right in the ultra long run and ADA does go 1000x, you're all invited to my island to celebrate. I'll make sure to put on the record. But if not, there's no biggie, right? I'll settle for steady growth and real accomplishments any day. And so there you have it. One big, bold claim, a ton of buzz, a reality check, one investor's journey through it all. It's been a fun ride, and it certainly won't last crazy, or it won't be the last crazy thing that we all hear in crypto, right? So what do you think? Is 1000x just a fantasy, or is it the kind of kernel of truth in Charles's optimism? You can let me know, because I'm genuinely actually curious how everyone else is processing this. And if you've enjoyed coming along on this little adventure, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, stick around, as this crypto journey is only just getting started. And trust me, you don't want to miss the next twist. I'll see you in the next one.